After all that cheering, I'm not sure that I should even bother with this, but we'll go ahead. Dearest class of 2022, it is finally here, your commencement. I'm about to read your names, but this is not the end. It is the beginning of the next big chapter of your life. You have achieved the milestone of completing your primary and secondary education, and now you move forward into the great, confusing, and exciting moments of young adulthood. Poet and philosopher Henry David Thoreau once wrote, quote, "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." It is quotations like these that graduation speakers like myself often use to help develop a theme or scaffold to their long drawn-out diatribe about what is ahead and what you should do. Speakers like me choose these quotations generally for one of two reasons. A, they are exceptionally well read of the author's works, and this is just one small piece of the collection that resonates with them. Or B, they Googled inspiring graduation quotes, and this popped up. You would get Group A with Mrs. Bush. I'm Group B. And I will also kid you not that when I began to type this quotation into this document, Google auto-filled this quote, which means that it is used very, very frequently by people like me. So instead of a long, boring speech about living the transcendentalist life using poetry and literature I have never read, though I will admit it was probably assigned to me in my sophomore year of language arts class back in 1993, I have decided to write instead a speech using source material that I am well versed in a scaffold for the forthgoing advice that I will offer. It is not classic literature or ancient philosophy. It is not even supposed to be used as a foundation for really any kind of thinking, but it is a medium that I know well and I love dearly. It is a little TV show called The Office. So hang on tight, because this is going to be a bumpy ride. As a side note, if you've never seen The Office and are more of a Thoreau fan, I will give you a quick synopsis of the program. Essentially, it is a mockumentary about a branch office of a paper country called Dunder Mifflin. The protagonist is Michael Scott, the world's best boss, but he is also kind of an idiot. So, if you're not a fan of the show, my apologies ahead of time, but I hope that you can still learn some lessons along the way. So I present to you graduation advice from The Office. Also, please note that all quotation marks are being used in this speech so as to avoid demerit citations, violations, verbal warnings, written warnings, disciplinary reviews, and full disadulations for plagiarism. And I will try to keep things brief, as I do not want this to be too long. First piece of advice: don't be an idiot. This is the best advice Michael ever gave Dwight. As you go forth, when you are going to do something, think to yourself, would an idiot do that? And if so, do not do that thing. I think this may be the best advice I can share with you tonight, and I know I shouldn't lead with the best advice, but you should also not lead with your weakest advice, so here we are. Additional words of wisdom come from Michael when he tells Dwight, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Great advice, but hurts his feelings every time. So as you go into the world, don't be an idiot. Keep it simple, make good choices, because decisions can last a lifetime. Second, someday you may be a parent, and some of you may also have employees that work for you. Michael offers more great advice for both of these situations. When considering how he wants people to feel about him, he posits, would I rather be loved or feared? The answer? Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me. Now, this can apply to all walks of life. Maybe it's when you have to hand down some form of corporate punishment to an employee, or you have to discipline your nephew, or in some instances do both at the same time. Or maybe your own children are being disrespectful and calling you names like Mr. Poop. In any event, you will want to love them, and you will want them to love you, but sometimes you have to achieve that love by being mean. But remember, Michael also teaches us that sometimes the ends justify the mean. Seriously though, focus on love. Don't be mean to each other. When you find ways to love others, they will find ways to love you back. The third piece of advice is to help you to avoid money problems. If you find yourself in an unmanageable debt, you need to know that you cannot just say the word bankruptcy and expect anything to happen. You have to declare it. But to avoid that, let's remember the sage advice that Michael gives when he comes into $645, more or less. Although that money literally makes him a king at Burlington Coat Factory, a valuable lesson is learned when the money doesn't materialize. And so he teaches us, quote, never buy a fur coat on a credit card until you absolutely have the money to pay for it. This also applies to DVD box sets of The Muppet Show and multiple magic kits. And as well, do not charge those things to your corporate credit card, as they are not legitimate business expenses, and Toby will take your card away. What I mean to say is be smart with your money. Wait, save, and be prudent. Avoid debt as much as you can, live within your means, and always think about the future. But if you do get into trouble, remember, a good 45-day, 45-point plan should solve all of your problems. I'm going to wrap up with one more large piece of advice, but there's a few things that I want to highlight from Dwight. First, don't turn your back on bears, men you have wronged, or the dominant turkey during mating season. And speaking of bears, remember that bears eat beets. Bears can run faster than a horse, so if you're trying to outrun one on a horse, I would try a cheetah. Bears can climb faster than they can run, and bears can smell salami from 5 miles away. There's a lot of bear advice in the office. Finally, I want to conclude with a quote from a very silly show that is actually pretty meaningful. In the finale episode, Andy reflects back on his time at Dunder Mifflin after a year away from his old friends, and as he ponders all that they shared in the office, he tells us, quote, I wish there was a way to know you were in the good old days before you left them. You are of an age when the next step appears to be better than where you stepped from. But don't lose sight of the moment. Don't miss out on what's happening now because of what is next. Don't wish the days away. I promise you, your mom and dad and grandma and grandpa are looking at you right now, thinking not about your next step, but remembering your first steps. The sweet infant who kept them up at night, the toddler who rampaged through their belongings, and the kindergartner that they took 1 million pictures of on the first day of school. They held you when you cried, they kissed those boo-boos that caused you pain, and they sit there today in awe of what you have become. Memories of the big events of your life are great, but it is the common, simple moments that might be truly the good old days. And these simple things, those ordinary moments, will be the memories that stick with you when you are old and gray. In the final episode of The Office, Pam reflects on why, for 9 years, a documentary crew would choose a boring, run-of-the-mill paper company as its subject, but then reminds us that, quote, there is a lot of beauty in ordinary things. Isn't that kind of the point? Don't miss the ordinary things in your life. Cherish the people and experiences that you get to have every day. There is beauty in ordinary things. Congratulations to you all. May your hats fly as high as your dreams, and I'll see you on the flippity flip.